Welcome back, Saviors, GH here. Today we're going to take a look at what I call Control Wizard. It consists of Cryo, Kino, and Elementalist. So what we're gonna do is check out each classes, show relevant skills, what they do, tell you guys the reason why each of these classes are here in this build, the pros and cons, and some final thoughts to finish up the video. And with that said, here is Control Wizard. Let's do this. Here's the build. We got Cryomancer, Elementalist, and Psychokino. Let's start with Elementalist. Now, Elementalists harness the elements to buff or cast powerful elemental attacks, and the reason this class is here is of course to get a boost on elemental attacks. More specifically, Ice Boost. Now, what are those spells or attributes that we need here? Let's start with spells. First off is Elemental Essence. To make it simple, this spell gives you a boost on damage if the target is weak to the element you're using. For example, if the enemy is fire element and you use ice spell, you get a boost on damage. Now, the first attribute we're gonna look at is called Elemental Amplify. This attribute gives you 50% chance to get 30% damage increase on the element you're using, which includes fire, ice, lightning, and earth. Then there's Element Mastery, Elemental. This increases the damage of fire, ice, lightning, and earth spells if you're wearing a staff or a rod. Then of course, Elementalist is more than just a damage increasing class. It also has spells, namely Meteor, a devastating area attack that deals fire elemental damage. There's an art for this that creates fireball around you that you can use to attack. Then there's Storm Dust, another wide area attack that deals earth elemental damage. This is pretty useful for mobbing. Then lastly, Hail. This is an ice elemental area attack that can deal more damage the bigger the enemy is. It can also freeze. And that's Elementalist. It's shaping up to be the go-to class if you want a specific elemental class to get buffed. And now let's head on to Cryomancer. Now, Cryomancer is the ice elemental class that specializes in controlling enemies, more specifically freezing them. And the reason it's here is very obvious. This class can hold hordes of enemies or a single target in place, making them easy targets for their teammates. Now let's take a look at the spells. First off is Frost Pillar. This is one of your main crowd control spell. It deals ice elemental damage and freezes enemies within its range. For 10 seconds, enemies wouldn't be able to do anything. Another crowd control spell is Snow Rolling. And as the name suggests, you roll a snowball and render mobs inside the snowball useless. This is an excellent spell for challenge mode. Next spell is Ice Pipe. This is a very wide freezing attack. Against monsters, if the enemy is not a boss, most likely they will be frozen. The next spell is SubZero Shield. To put it simply, it's a buff that freezes enemies attacking you. This is a very annoying spell for your enemies. Lastly is Ice Wall. This conjures up Ice Wall that you can hit to produce icicles that can deal damage. Do not use mouse mode when forming Ice Wall, it's buggy as hell. Use a gamepad for easy forming of Ice Wall. I know there's an add-on, but there are reports that IMC bans people who use this Ice Wall add-on, so to be safe, skip that add-on. And that's Cryomancer, an awesome crowd control class. Now let's go to the last class, Psychokino. Now, Kino is a psychic wizard that is extremely angry against mutant type monsters. And they also specialize on crowd control, which is of course the reason why this class is here. Now let's take a look on the spells. First off is Psychic Pressure. This is an area attack that deals 50% more damage against mutant type and can stun enemies with 50% chance. For some reason, it can't stun bosses, only regular mobs. Now, this spell works with Cryomancer's Icefall because you can use it to quickly shoot icicles from the ice wall. Here's the demo. The damage is pretty good, but not exactly amazing. The next spell is Rise. This rise up enemies for 5 seconds, making them useless for 5 seconds. Then we have Heavy Gravity. It's an area attack that deals 50% more damage against mutant types. And there's an art for this called Distort. It makes it work with Race. Then what we have next is another awesome crowd control called Gravity Pole. This creates a line in front of you that makes enemies stop moving. This deals 50% damage against mutant types. Then lastly, Magnetic Force. This is another crowd control that drags enemies on the center of the magnetic force then deals damage. And like the others, this deals 50% damage against mutant types. And that's the build, an overwhelming crowd control specialist. And now let's do the good and the bad. Let's start with the bad. And as you probably expect, this has lower damage output than the current meta. And that's obviously a bad thing, because damage is king in this game. Everybody is DPS, even the clerics. Another thing is Cryomancer needs a bit more buff in terms of damage to make it compete with the current meta. At least a boost in PvE environments. And now for the good stuff. This is extremely good for making enemies stop moving, which makes it really viable for challenge mode and boss fighting as such, assuming they can be frozen. All in all, this build is good if you're new and don't have a high enough damage, because the purpose of this build is crowd control, which is very useful in most situations. And that's the build. What do you think? Is the build good enough or not? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you liked the video, hit the thumbs up, share, and then subscribe to be part of the Gaming Hardcore family. And as always, this is Gaming Hardcore. See you in the next one.